Welcome everyone, I'm Megatrick, and I'm here with the standard Harri deck discussion. I'll start with a brief history of the deck, then I'll talk about the list I brought to a top 32 finish during BCS Toronto. Let's begin. Harri follows the trend that most Stride deck sets do, where they play similarly to how they did back in G. Messiah getting more attacks through locking and unlocking, Luar toolboxing grade 1s, Nui being a fucking menace, and Harri deck fitting and ending the game through a barrage of attacks. As stated by Toyo on Twitter, the core of Orbital, Manticore, Showered Applause, Tizcar, Togs, and Servant Falcratia make the deck very strong to build around. You have a grade 3 engine that gives you multi-attack, a big beater with drop zone recursion, Tog to help search these two, Tizcar for cycling and draw throughout the game, and Servant Falcratia as a big beater that you can call off Manticore. On top of this core, I'd also like to add the inclusion of Walk the Dark. I believe this is a very powerful inclusion to the deck core. This way, your Togs will always have a target to search, which turns into a 15k shield every turn, allowing you to play a longer game, to scale your crest harder, and to win through that power. Up next, we have Argandia. This card is both a 10k shield before our stride turns and a 15k shield after it. This is important as it's only when he's put on guard circle, in which case we could throw him down early, aggro with him if need be, and then just intercept him away as a free shield. In this slot, a lot of people opt to run Gungan Ram instead. I am personally not a fan of Gungan Ram because we want to minimize on our blind soul charge as much as possible. In my list specifically, the only blind soul charge we have is off of Harri's on-stride skill. However, a lot of people decide to just draw more cards to guard more early, which is a valid perspective to have, don't get me wrong. However, I would personally rather deck than more, using skills such as Jacqueline's on-ride, and Lunatic Dragon's skill every turn, to compress our deck as much as possible. Blind soul charging in that type of scenario means that we are more likely to soul charge our triggers, which means that 1, we're down a trigger to drive check or damage check, and 2, we're losing out on 15k shield that we could potentially have in hand, which is why I've opted for Argandia over Gungan Ram. So now, let's talk kill options. Before we begin, I would like to say, I would only recommend either of these routes if 1, you're not going to live another turn, so you just have to try to kill them on this turn. Or 2, if you have 4 face-up G units, or plus 20k to your front row due to crest scaling. Now, where do we begin? First, you have to decide which route you want to take by either not striding and using Harri's GB2 ability, or by discarding a Harri, so that way you can stride into Dragon Masquerade Harri. Both of these have their ups and downsides. First things first, we'll start with Dragon Masquerade Harri. With this card, you'll need anywhere between 2 to 3 CB for full combo. You'll need 3 CB if you do not have either Forbital or Paratrooper, in which case you'll use Harri's on-stride ability to call Manticore for additional attack. You'll go Manticore, rear guard, swing with Masquerade Master, use his counterblast to move your front row in to call out 2 more, thus totaling 6 attacks. Otherwise, Harri's GB2 ability on attack gets you an additional attack, but I would only recommend this route, once again, if you have either Forbital or Paratrooper, in which case you can set up your Manticore for 5 attacks total, because you'll go Manticore, rearguard, Harri, call out another rearguard, and then you have 2 more rearguard swings after that. That being said, I would only, and once again, only recommend this if you have either of these 2 cards here. Otherwise, just go for your Lunatic Dragon, it gets you the same amount of attacks. I was in the middle of editing, I forgot to show off my actual list. So this is what I brought to Toronto, basically everything I talked about in the video already. Schemer's here to boost, help you with grade 2 gaming. Give Showered Applause boost, shit's peak. I expected more Rezales and Night Rose, so that's why this anti-hostage card's in the deck. Cool, there we go. Editing's hard, YouTube's hard. Back to the video. Up next, let's talk about the other Harri list that hit top 32 during BCS Toronto. First off, huge shout out to Proto-Exia for piloting this list. It was really cool to see another local guy make it in with Harri of all things in Toronto, because this was the first major event with a Harri top, at least in English Vanguard as far as I'm concerned. So it's really cool to see not just 1, but 2 Harris make it in. Like, that shit's crazy. But anyways, going into the list, he did mention that he wanted to make it a bit more toolboxy, which is why you see a lot of 1-ofs and 2-ofs here, but in particular, I do want to highlight a couple of cards. First things first, Crucial Dragon is a very cool card, allowing you to have some sort of way to interact with your opponent's board. This primarily could come up in certain matchups like the hostage matchups, where you want to pop their PGs before they actually get a chance to use them. Other thing is Ornetta. This card allows you to actually toolbox harder, checking top 5, deck thinning more. The only real downside I see with this card is that it's only one place from hand, and as a one-of, it seems a bit unreliable, but he's gotta be cooking something, right? There's a reason she's here. Up next, the other cards that I do want to mention are Darkside Princess. This was a card that I personally considered as well. She is one of the bigger beaters, but personally, Valkratia is live more often than not to get that 15k push, so that's why I just opted to just cut Dark Lord entirely. Now this is a cook. Squalid Freaks is very strong for your additional push turns. This forces a lot more shield than I initially thought, giving you just a blanket +5 for the turn when your Vanguard swings. This is huge, especially on the Lunatech turns, where ideally you want to go Vanguard first to stack any triggers you want on your Manticore, because your Manticore is always the weakest number, like that's just how it is. So giving another +5 on top of that can help close out games, and I do really like this idea. Up next, we have the blue OT, which is a good OT. If I wasn't running purple, I would definitely lean towards blue. Giving more drop zone recursion to recur PGs and whatnot is always great, and it's just another defensive OT in a sense, where you want to check it just to get more shield into your hand. And if I wasn't on Forbital, I would definitely be running Caliburn, because this is arguably one of the better forms of CC for the deck outside of Amethyst, but the ability to draw 2 to help insulate your hand with more shield value is really good, and I do enjoy these changes that Proto-Exia made within his own list. So would I recommend playing Harri? Yeah, deck's fun. However, the thing is that this deck has a lot of expensive pieces that I would struggle to recommend to a newer player. Orbital is still expensive, Tiz cards are still expensive, Togs are still expensive, and these three feel like staple cards. You could get away with running Caliburn instead of Orbital, but both Tiz cards and Togs feel like a must-have for the deck, so it's hard to recommend to a new player, but if you have access to these cards, go ahead. The only real downside is that this deck will struggle a bit more in a set 6 meta, where Messiah becomes a bit more prevalent. That deck could just simply outgrade 2 game us and then we're cooked. It's over from there. Missing out on that first stride, in Harri specifically, hurts a lot more than you would expect. However, a key point to playing Harri is knowing what resources to commit at any point in the game, knowing what's in your deck, and when to grade 2 game. If you can master these skills, I think you'll have a good time playing Harri. With that being said, thank you for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed this video.